In 2004, I was a hungry as hell film geek waiting in anguish to get to film school to indulge myself into every bit of cinema, blockbusters, dramas, indies, and everything in between. I saw a film on its opening night in late October at the Regency Director's Cut in Orange County. I took my girlfriend at the time to see this film. We both knew next to nothing about it. All I knew is that I loved Paul Giamatti's previous work, and I adored one of Alexander Payne's previous films, Election. Very few films speak to us on emotional and physical levels. When you find one, it's a beautiful thing. Sideways not only did that through its story and themes, but also through its characters. This film meant a lot to me based on how I was thinking and feeling at the time. I knew it was destined to be one of my favorites. And lo and behold, it was. I fell in love with Miles, Jack, Maya, and of course, wine. I bought the book as soon as I could and read it cover to cover in 2 days, which for me was pretty fast. Just when I thought I couldn't possibly want to be a filmmaker anymore, along came Sideways. And now that it's reached its 20th anniversary, let's talk about it. Rex Pickett was born and raised in San Diego, California, and attended the University of California, San Diego, where he studied contemporary literature, film criticism, and creative writing. In the early 80s, he attended the USC Film School of Cinematic Arts graduate program, but dropped out. In 1988, however, feeling he had the necessary skills acquired from USC, Pickett wrote and directed 2 indie films, one of which was sold to Island Pictures. This film was titled From Hollywood to Deadwood, about 2 loser detectives investigating the disappearance of a missing starlet. Pretty standard film noir stuff for an amateur at the time, and it wasn't received all that well. In the late 80s, amongst the large list of others tasked with the same job, he was hired to write on David Fincher's infamous Alien 3 script. If you know the story to that one, you know. It was a mess. Not getting much work after, he went on to write a live-action short film titled My Mother Dreams the Satan's Disciples in New York that actually won an Oscar in 1999. Before that, however, he started to dabble into writing novels, first one of which was a mystery titled La Purissima, which bombed hard. His second effort, well, it was Sideways. He was contemplating getting out of writing altogether after the lackluster reception of La Purissima. However, Sideways as well was a very bumpy road. After 18 rejections, his agent pulled it from submissions. Sounding familiar yet?
They're passing.
In 1999, nearly a year after he finished it, one of the submissions somehow ended up in the hands of director Alexander Payne's assistant, Brian Beery, who read it and passed it on to Payne. Payne read the book in full on a flight back from Edinburgh after promoting his film Election, which I love so much. Once he read it, he optioned it immediately. However, not as a publishing deal, but as a full-length feature film. Pickett's agent resubmitted the manuscript again to even more publications, but it still was getting rejected. So Payne had to put it on the back burner and direct About Schmidt first. Once he was able to reset his sights on Sideways, it still hadn't been published. Then in 2003, Pickett's new agent, who really just wanted to see the thing get made into a movie at this point, ended up selling the novel in a fire sale for a measly $5,000. During which time all that was going on, Payne and his writing partners had already finalized the adapted script and began principal photography. The book was finally published in June of 2004, a mere 4 months before the movie was set to hit theaters. That's insane.
Yes, well, I mean, it's written in first person, and I had failed with a novel that didn't get published, and I had really hit rock bottom, and a lot of other things were going wrong in my life, and I just basically threw in everything in the kitchen sink. So it was almost my swan song to Hollywood. People think of me as a novelist, but I'd written and directed a couple features, and I'd mostly written screenplays, so I tried to reinvent myself as a novelist, and it wasn't working, and I gave it my Hail Mary shot. That's the God's truth, Dave.
Greenlit by Fox Searchlight, which I still think puts out some of the best films all these years later. This has been known as one of those productions where the cast and the crew just got along wonderfully. Payne even stated that sometimes it felt like an extended bachelor party. Thomas Hayden Church and Paul Giamatti, outside of being constant professionals, were hilarious, especially together.
Big crash.
It was the perfect match to play these two characters. The chemistry as two best friends with a very complicated relationship felt so real and not unlike many friendships I still have today with college buddies or lifelong friends. The cast loved that Payne never used a monitor. He's actually watching his cast and watching the scene unfold oblivious to the idea of staging and blocking, and just absorbing. In likely the funniest scene of the movie, an entire street was blocked off by the police for the filming of the scene, which MC Gainey runs naked down the street.
Here's your wallet! You got it! I'm gonna kill you, Ray! You got my wallet! I'll find you! I will find you, Mom!
Moreover, the people who lived in the houses on those streets were paid by the crew to stay inside their homes during the shooting of the particular scene. I'm guessing some were looking out the window. I'm also guessing that some wish they hadn't. Paul Giamatti knew nothing about wine prior to shooting this film. Many viewers were surprised to find this out, but why? He's an actor playing a role. Trust me, many people became instant wine connoisseurs shortly after seeing this film. We'll get back to that later. One thing that in hindsight seems noticeable, in the best way, is the double date dinner scene. Most of the dialogue with Paul, Thomas, Virginia, and Sandra was improv. Watch it again, and it really takes on a new meaning. Cinematographer Feedin' Papa Michael uses the camera not to simply showcase the beauty of the Central Valley, but to create a stark contrast to the melancholy and anxiety of the actors and the situations. Of course, the scenery is incredible to look at, but the framing and the movements really feel expressive and sad at the same time. It's a great juxtaposition of the beauty in the background and the way the characters are feeling at those moments. Also, it adds to the humor as the camera moves around, circling Miles and Jack as they converse. Some great dialogue captured perfectly by the cinematography.
This is gonna be fun. This is gonna be fun.
No tell.
Editor Kevin Tent, he has a very unique sense of where the camera's placed and how to adapt to a conversation of four people using a 50-50 shot or even a shot reverse shot. It's magnetic but also unrecognizable unless you're looking for it. There's a large amount of picture-in-picture sequences that are a lot of fun to help progress the events in a timely manner, but it's the subtle cuts that make him unique. The perfect pacing that really makes the film what it is, just as much as the writing and the directing. Hashtag editors are the third storytellers. He was nominated for 2 Oscars, both Payne films, in 2011, The Descendants, and 2023, The Holdovers, my favorite film of the year. I live in Southern California. I spent a lot of my life in wine country, specifically the Santa Barbara County area, the Central Coast and the Central Valley. I love Buellton. I love Los Olivos. I love Cambria. One of my favorite pastimes and small vacations to take on weekends or week-long excursions would be to go up there and revisit some of the filming locations. The Days Inn Buellton was titled the Windmill Inn for the film and became the mecca of tourism and sightseeing. Now called the Sideways Inn for obvious money-making reasons, people from all over the world go to check out Miles and Jack's room, the pool, the jacuzzi, but especially the bar, now called the Sideways Lounge. Laying it on a little bit thick in my opinion. However, since then it's undergone so much remodeling and the rooms no longer bear any resemblance at all to the film. My brother and I were lucky enough to have visited on more than one occasion and stayed in the room from the film before the remodeling. And even though it's overpriced and kind of shitty, it was amazing to get to stay there and live vicariously for the weekend. The restaurant Jack and Miles are eating in before they go wine tasting is our absolute favorite place in Solvang to go have breakfast. It's an extraordinary Danish breakfast, and it's one of the cheaper places. So much of the beauty of the Central California Valley terrain is compared quite often to Tuscany and the romantic atmosphere that spreads through the landscape. And Pickett wanted to set it there instead of Napa Valley or Sonoma County because of its uniqueness.
There was something unique. I think a lot of people haven't discovered this little corner of the world.
Unfortunately, his book and the movie did a little bit too much damage for my taste, where now it's too busy and I don't want to go out there anymore. Too many tourists, too much overpriced wine, too much land development over vineyards. Anyway, I digress. When my brother and I would go up there and essentially become the characters, we'd become completely enveloped in the atmosphere and culture of true Southern Cali wine tasting. Sometimes we'd go up there with our significant others at the time and show them the experience. But it was always most fun when it was just my brother and I. Though to this day, I don't know who Miles was and who Jack was at any given time, I'd like to say we both had a little bit of the two of them in us. The first tasting room that Miles takes Jack to, in the famous scene where he teaches our naive Jack the proper way to taste a sampler, was shot at the now gone Sanford Winery, located in the heart of Buellton, that specialized in Pinots. We got the absolute privilege of not only going there several times before it closed down for good, but to actually hang out with a character from the film who played himself.
Just released about 2 months ago.
Nice job.
We like it.
A very well-respected local wine sommelier, Chris Burgess. During one of our tastings, he caught on pretty quick that my brother and I were close, and wine tasting through Central Cali. And he respected that. So much that when it came to closing time, he locked up with us inside and opened up some very special Pinot Noirs. It was a surreal experience to say the least, as we talked about his brother who had recently passed, and he taught us things about wine culture that you won't get from any movie. We hung out for about 2.5 hours talking and getting to know Chris as he told us about his life, love of wine, and family. My brother and I talk about this experience often. AJ Spurs is probably your most typical bar restaurant that you'll find in Buellton. The movie makes it look a little bit bigger than it is, and I'm not gonna lie, it's not cheap. But the barbecue is on point. My brother and I got really drunk in there one night over some local IPAs and some pork chops. It was a hoot. The Hitching Post is another really special place, near and dear to our hearts. The place where Miles and Jack see Maya for the first time, where they share a bottle of Highliner, which to this day is my favorite Pinot of all time. The porterhouse and the ribeyes melt in your mouth so much that you really don't even need a knife to cut through them. We also got pretty drunk in there too, drinking an $80 bottle of Highliner, way out of our budget by the way, but when in Rome. I was so in love with the food that I calmly and respectfully demanded that the famous executive chef come out and have a drink with us. And he obliged. We made a brief stop to the laid-back winery where the guys meet Stephanie for the first time, Culinary Winery. It was a pretty terrific little winery where we were able to finagle another photo, again with purple wine teeth. So Thomas Hayden Church had left the film acting business, concentrating on voiceover work when he received a phone call from Alexander Payne to audition for the role of Jack. During filming, understandably, he was very nervous about the love scene he had with Sandra Oh, as, she was married to Alexander Payne, the director at the time. And it's sort of a very unflattering look at a love scene, to say the least. It's been known for a while that George Clooney actually championed himself for the role of Miles in early pre-production, but Payne just felt he was way too good looking. He could have possibly played Jack's role, but I'm so glad he didn't because it all happened the way it should. I know Paul was asked several times how he felt about this, but he's such a classy guy, he just made a self-deprecating joke. Despite receiving Best Actor nominations at the Golden Globes and Screen Actors Guild, Paul Giamatti failed to receive a nomination for the Oscars. However, Thomas Hayden Church and Virginia Madsen were both nominated for supporting actors. Weird. I think he's not only deserving of a nomination, but he should have won. In 2023, he was nominated for The Holdovers, but lost out to Cillian Murphy, who was great, but I don't think there was a better performance in 2023 than Paul Giamatti. They sure seem to love him, but not quite enough. Awards don't really mean shit, but I do wish he'd gotten one for that. Alexander Payne and writing partner Jim Taylor worked with Pickett on the adaptation of the screenplay. To this day, it's considered the writing duo's most faithful book-to-screen adaptation, mirroring the book's arcs, scenes, and sometimes even dialogue verbatim. Jim Taylor recalls, "The book hadn't been published yet, so it was going through some revisions, and we read different versions of it. What hooked us were the characters and the situations, and we loved those two guys." The first half of the film is very, very close to the book. However, for the second half, Payne and Taylor did a brilliant job of keeping the film classy, so it doesn't go quite as dark and nonsensical as some of the escapades we find Miles and Jack in the book. As you may or may not know, the book is written in first person and mostly based on Rex Pickett himself. Being from San Diego, at one point being a failed novelist with many, many rejections by publishers. However, one thing that solely stands out as a difference between the book and the movie is Miles' golfing skills. In the book, Miles is a great golfer with an amazing swing and a great handicap, just like Rex Pickett himself. However, Paul Giamatti did not know how to swing a golf club, pretty evident from the film. It was reported that the production spent over $5,000 to get Paul golf lessons in order to improve his swing for the shoot. Let's just say that money was not well spent.
Oh, for Christ's sake. Oh, fuck. Oh, for Christ's sake.
However, Pickett would go on to say later that it works better in the movie that he's not a good golfer. It works better with his anxiety and his insecurities. Being a good golfer for the character of Miles, the way Giamatti plays it just wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. He's good at certain things, but clearly sports were not one of them, at least by the film's depiction of the character. As I've stated, so much of the film and book is based on Rex Pickett's life. Without getting too personal, it's implied pretty hard in the novel and film that Miles cheated on his ex-wife. Well, did life imitate art? I'll leave it at that.
Small she can make you feel? Isn't that why you had the affair with Brenda in the first place?
Shut your face. Shut up.
And I understand the motivation for creating Miles in that light. He's not a perfect person. In fact, he may not even be a very good one. But we're all human beings trying to do the best we can and trying to fight urges that occasionally and swistfully hit us at the most obscene times. Rex himself is actually a huge wine connoisseur, if you couldn't tell, and implanted that into the Miles character, later stating, Miles has found a refuge from his depression in wine. But really, he has a passion for something that you can really have a passion for.
Grow what you want, grow it wherever you want, just make it taste fucking good.
I don't want to get too much into the drama of onset and years later after the films are released between Sandra Oh and Alexander Payne regarding their divorce and rights to the movie character and future Sideways projects. However, I will say that Rex Pickett was unhappy with the changes that she made to her character, including changing the name from Tara to Stephanie, having her ride a motorcycle, and giving her a biracial child. Crazy thing is in retaliation, in Pickett's follow-up novel, Vertical, Tara's mentioned as now working as a prostitute in Reno. Kinda fucked up on the part of Pickett, but I get his frustration. The basic online synopsis reads, 2 men reaching middle age, with not much to show, but disappointed, embark on a week-long road trip through California wine country, just as one is about to take a trip down the aisle, blah blah blah. Yeah, sure, that's the gist of it. Sideways is so much about the feeling of irrelevancy, loss of love, loss of purpose, and feeling stuck where you are in life. What I love so much about the book and the script is the relatability of it. Not just Miles and Jack, but also Maya and Stephanie. Maya is a brilliant woman, getting her master's in horticulture, but has gone through a really hard marriage that ended in divorce. She's also trying to find herself and letting her interests guide her into her new career in life. Stephanie is a flaky person without drive or motivation, but she is also guided by her love and passion for wine. Both of them are extraordinarily intelligent in the world, culture, science, and industry of wine. However, their lives are in disarray to some extent. Miles and Jack, being college roommates who remain best friends, have such different personalities, interests, talents, and insecurities. When they take the road trip for the bachelor party week to the Central Valley, they may not exactly grow as people, but they learn a lot about one another that they didn't realize. Even though they're the same guys, they live 2 counties away from each other, so they don't have a lot of time to get together. Many things in their lives and minds probably change between one visit and the next. I hesitate to call wine country a backdrop because it plays just as much of a character in this film as the actors do, but setting it there, obviously based on the book first, it creates a false romanticism and fantasy that just puts a band-aid on the characters' problems that they're all running from. And why not? Wine country is the best place to do that. I've been known for doing that a few times myself. You can't run away from your problems, but you sure can drown them in wine. Miles still holding a lot of weight for the failure of his marriage and his mistakes causing it. Jack masking his sadness of his failing career with booze and sex. Jack needs attention and intoxication to feel like he's still Dr. Derek Summersby from One Life to Live.
Did you ever know Derek Summersby?
Dr. Derek Summersby from One Life to Live?
The harsh fact is he has completely fell down a well of obscurity. There's really no other director I could possibly think of that would be such a perfect fit for these characters and the subject matter, because Payne gives his characters the attention. He loves every single character that he helps create from page to screen. His brilliant talent of shot selection, letting moments breathe, and also promoting a very loose set for people to collaborate, improvise, and add suggestions is why everyone likes working with him, and usually why most of his films are pretty great. I saw the film 3 times in the theater the month it came out. I told everyone I know to see it, and it became a classic amongst me and my friends. The original score from the movie was All That Jazz, a jazz instrumental composed and produced by Ralphie Kent, and orchestrated and arranged by the band Tony Blondell. It was nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Original Score, and it proved so popular there was a huge demand for it even outside the United States. It's just such a wonderful and classy listen. If you like jazz music, then it has everything you could want. It's perfectly symbolic as it sits in the theme, it's wonderful as a background piece in the movie, and more importantly, along with the editing, it helps with some of those montage transitions so well. This score is the soundtrack of not only the film, but of the Central Valley. The film opened on October 22nd in the US to amazing reviews, and word of mouth caught on pretty quick, becoming one of those rare films that opens small, starts to grow, and slowly but surely moves its way up the box office list instead of down it. On a budget of $16 million, it went on to gross $71 million in the United States and an astounding $110 million worldwide. In 2013, the Writers Guild of America ranked its script as the 90th greatest script ever written. I would put it higher on that list, but I'm just happy it's there. It became the highest grossing Alexander Payne film at that point and held that spot until 2011's The Descendants, which garnered up a whopping $82 million domestically and $177 million worldwide. Whew! But that one could be accredited a lot to the star power of George Clooney, but you could also argue it was because people were looking to see what the next film by the Sideways director was making. Critics fucking loved this film, with Roger Ebert putting it as one of the top 10 films of 2004, and Richard Roeper calling it a masterpiece.
I think Giamatti and Virginia Madsen deserve Oscar nominations.
With its emphasis on dialogue and realism, and with a tone of intelligent comedy mixed with some tough dramatic moments, this film reminded me of some classic early 70s films like Five Easy Pieces and Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore.
And it was the first film ever to win Best Screenplay from all 5 major critic groups: National Board of Review, New York, Los Angeles, Broadcast Film Critics, and National Society of Film Critics, the Golden Globes, the BAFTAs, the WGA, and of course, the Academy Awards.
Alexander Payne and Jim Taylor for Sideways.
And we thank Rex Pickett, on whose novel the screenplay was based, and our wonderful producer, Michael London. Jim?
We've been lucky enough to be writing partners for 15 years.
However, it was also the only Best Picture nominated that year that did not receive a nomination for Best Actor. We love you, Paul. We love you. There's not a whole lot of changes in the story when it comes to deleted scenes of this one, but there is a tiny subplot that I want to mention. But let's get these out of the way. There's a quick scene showing a little bit more about Miles as a person and his belief system as he takes the Bible out from the room beside the bed in the hotel and throws it in the trash. Kind of a funny scene, but I can see why they chopped it. Doesn't need to be there. Doesn't really add anything. There's a scene where Miles is driving, flipping through radio stations, and accidentally hits a dog. He goes searching for it, but yeah, the scene doesn't really go anywhere, and it's an easy one to cut. And if you've read Vertical, they almost sort of do the same thing in the book.
And it's just Jesus Christ.
The best deleted scenes were, in fact, part of the small storyline that was taken out of the film altogether. When Jack is checked into the hospital from Stephanie-inflicted motorcycle helmet wounds to the nose, he's prescribed Vicodin. We see Miles and Jack indulge into the bottle as soon as they hit the car.
I hate this place.
Well, you take a couple of these, and you will learn to love it. Okay. 2 for you, and 2 for me.
If you ever thought they were acting a little bit funny in the jacuzzi scene and the scene in the hotel room that follows, it's because it was shot as if they were supposed to be pretty high as fuck.
I'm hungry.
On the original special edition DVD that came out once it left theaters, it has one of the funniest audio commentaries ever with Giamatti and Church.
I love how the flames go shooting up as she comes walking over me.
Now I make a very pointed, downward glance. Watch. I will stare directly at her breasts.
You can tell they were having such a blast and probably drinking some good Pinot while doing it. It's no secret that the film had a huge cultural impact on the wine industry. Financially, it propped up wineries not only in the Santa Barbara County, but all around the world. It created a new love and interest among young people, specifically in the world of Pinot Noir, drawing attention and increasing tourism in the Santa Barbara County, California Central Coast regions. It actually got pretty annoying how many people all of a sudden became wine experts, but hot damn did it blow the lid off the wine business, especially Pinot. And rightfully so, it's a superb wine. However, on the flip side, a 2009 study by Sonoma State University found that Sideways slowed the growth in Merlot sales volume and caused its price to fall due to its constant mockery of the wine selection. Hey, you like what you like. It's a fictional story of people who don't like Merlot. Doesn't mean you don't have to. I like a lot of Merlots. Okay, that's a lie.
Oh,
It's too dense and peppery for my taste. But it does get you drunk. As a piece of cinema, it doesn't get much better than this film in my mind. It's everything I love about film. Amazing actors playing amazing characters. A brilliant, expressive writer-director who only picks projects that speak to him, and typically given full control on these productions. Based on a book that really explores the highs and certainly lows of the male psyche. So much that it's written by a very talented writer that understands his faults and low points, which helped him to create some of my favorite characters in movies. For me, going down as one of the most beautifully acted, enchanting, hilarious, poignant, heartbreaking, and technically sound piece of filmmaking, directed by one of my favorite filmmakers. Happy 20th anniversary to Sideways, a small, modern masterpiece of cinema. Thanks for watching, everybody. Now I'm going to crack open a bottle of Cork Dancer and get fucked up.